welcome back to Author Chat. Today I have with me a romance, fantasy, and humor author, Anna Cackler. Hi, Anna.
Hi.
And upcoming, she has a new book out, Table 5, on April the 7th. Can you tell us a little bit about Table 5?
Yes, I wrote this thinking it would just be a quick and dirty erotic book, but it turned into something a little bit more as my main character, her motivation became more self-empowered focused. So it's about a character named May who has recently been dumped or cheated on, I should say, and she's made herself a dirty to-do list to try and find out what she's been missing. And her first item on the list is to sleep with a stranger, which goes very differently than she expected, and of course leads to many things that she did not see coming. So it's very funny, lighthearted. It's just a good time and very dirty. Yes.
So, when I asked you to be on today, it was because I read a blog post that you made about a destructive romance. And now you have two blog posts about this. And basically, you have asserted that authors have a bigger influence over society than any other genre. Did I say romance authors? I meant if I didn't add that in there. Romance authors hold a bigger influence over society than any other genre. They have a responsibility to never portray abusive behavior as romantic.
Yes.
And, I agree with that. And I have, some questions that I wanted to talk with you about that because not a lot of people come right out and say these things. I mean, there are some, but most of them aren't romance authors coming out and saying that. So, what behaviors do you feel that are the most problematic that are billed as romantic?
Well, I couldn't say what the most problematic are, but I could talk about the two that I see most often in books. One is when authors confuse confidence with force. Basically, a man makes sexual advances and is told to stop or don't do that, and he does it anyway. I have found actually recently a very good example of this in Country Bride by Debbie Macomber. It's a very popular author, very successful. Mm-hmm. And in it, one of the main character, her name is Kate, is getting ready to leave, and her love interest, Luke, is trying to convince her to stay. You're in love with me, do this, all this stuff. It's a whole thing. And he's kissing her, touching her, telling her she's in love, and she's saying, no, don't, and stop touching me. And his response is, I don't think I should, which was a big red flag for me. That, first of all, if he loves her, if he truly respects her as a person, it doesn't matter if she loves him. It doesn't matter if they're going to end up together. Right now, she said stop, and that means stop. It does not mean continue pushing the issue. Secondly, if Luke was right and she really did want that attention, the fact that she would say don't stop, she would say no when she really meant yes, that's also very questionable behavior, and I lost all respect for her if that were the case. So it was sexual assault. It was no respect for each other on either side, and I actually couldn't finish reading that book. So that's something that I see from time to time, where a woman doesn't want to be touched and the man is being very confident with his insisting. Right. Another one that I see all the time, and I have a spot on example for this one, is when a man kisses a woman to stop her from talking. My example here is In Bed with a Highlander, and is by, I don't remember now, Maya Banks, I believe. Maya Banks, yes. In it, I actually wrote down quotes because they are so exact. He sensed she was warming up for full-length diatribe, so he did the only thing he knew would silence her. He kisses her, right? And then that on its own is not really a big deal. Characters are flawed. They do bad things all the time. And, this was set in pre-industrial Scotland. It was a different time, you know, gender roles were different then. But even so, her response to this was what bothered me. This is the next quote. Her gasp of outrage was swallowed up by his mouth. Her second gasp was more of a sigh as she melted into his chest like warm honey. So basically, I don't know about you, but if I'm angry, if I'm starting to yell at someone, if that person then kissed me, oh, hell no, I am talking. So the fact that she would immediately have this transcendent experience instead of reacting appropriately, it was a big red flag. And this went on. It continued, just winter after winter. Why did you do that? And his response was, it was the only way to silence you, on the nose. And then she almost saves it by being angry about it. I won't allow you to do it again, right? And then his response, this guy's a real piece of work. His response was, he stifled his laughter at the fury in her eyes. So basically, she's been sexually assaulted and she doesn't like it. And he finds that amusing. I didn't like that. And so she almost saves it by being angry about it afterwards. But actually, this similar situation happened 2 or 3 more times as the story continued. And she enjoyed it every time. She melted into it like honey every single time. So it just didn't seem, I couldn't finish that book either. Those 2 books, I read one right after the other and I couldn't finish either one. I was very disappointed for a while. Yeah. So those are the 2 most common I see, is the confidence confused as confidence, and then silencing a woman with sexual assault, basically.
So, well, what do you say about those who say these flaws are necessary for interesting characters and stories?
They are absolutely necessary. We should never, ever whitewash abuse or character flaws out of romance or any fiction, really. The problem comes when the victim of the abuse views it as romantic or desirable, and just like, you know, melting into it like honey. That's not how a woman would reasonably react. It's desensitizing readers to casual abuse, and it's teaching them to look for similar treatment from their own romantic partners, or, you know, or else they become abusers themselves, thinking they're being romantic. You know, they're following the example of characters they read in these romance books. Twilight is another favorite of mine. And so there was a part where Edward breaks into Bella's house to stare at her while she's sleeping. And she finds it flattering, which is creepy. But anyway, anybody who might read that might think, oh, I can do that. I can creep on the person I have a crush on. It was romantic. Bella liked it, you know. And of course, there are plenty of people who do consider some of these behaviors as romantic. You know, people are not perfect. You know, society's social rules are very fluid. But usually the books that feature those types of plots, first, they won't have a happily ever after, so they won't be a romance novel, because that's required in romance. So it would be more like women's fiction or contemporary fiction. And then secondly, even if the main character views the abuse as romantic, the author isn't portraying it as a desirable or healthy situation to be in. My examples for this are actually movies, but that counts, that's storytelling, right? So Bridesmaids, starring Kristen Wiig and Maya Rudolph. It was a very funny movie. I liked it a lot. Anyway, Annie, who was played by Kristen Wiig, she repeatedly returned for more from her jerk boyfriend, John Hamm. I probably would too. He's a very good looking man. But she liked him a lot, and she excused his behavior constantly, probably because she just wanted to remain in this relationship with him. She thought this relationship was better than not having this relationship, so she put up with it.
Right.
But the viewer never considered it to be a good situation. He was portrayed as a jerk. So, I mean, it wasn't glorifying his behavior. Another one came out recently is The Favorite. Have you seen this movie?
I have.
Yes, it's so good. I love this movie. In it, the three leads, Emma Stone, Olivia Colman, and Rachel Rachel Wise. All three of them had kind of an ambiguous romantic relationship between them.
Mhm.
And at one point or another, all three of them were abusers. They were not nice people. And in the end, even though Abigail, Emma Stone, even though she got what she wanted, the relationship that she wanted, the viewer was left very uncomfortable because they could see how toxic it was. I mean, they weren't supposed to think this was a good situation she had landed herself in. So there are two ways to include unhealthy romance while not portraying it as healthy. First, either the victim, the character, the victim, sees it as a negative, or else the viewer or the reader is expected to see it as a negative situation.
Well, can you talk a bit about why romance authors in particular should shoulder this responsibility for not portraying abuse as romantic?
Well, it's really not just romance genre authors. It's any author who includes romance in their book in any genre. But there is a particular point for romance authors, the genre, romance genre, because it requires the happily ever after. And so at the end of a romance book, the two main characters end up happily together, and you can't portray a victim as being happily ever after with their abuser. That's not great. You know, authors of other genres like contemporary or women's fiction, they can have that sort of bittersweet ending because it's not really a happy ending, you know. But yeah, so even though everyone has the same responsibility, romance authors specifically have a lot less wiggle room. So they have to be more careful, I think, to make sure that they're not having an unhappy ending portrayed as a happy ending.
Yeah, I understand. So, do you feel that relationships depicted in YA novels should be held to a higher standard than those in adult fiction?
Nope. I think that young adult novels and adult novels should be held to the exact same standards in terms of healthy romance. I personally believe that children and teens should be taught the same social rules that adults are held accountable to. I mean, it's counterproductive to teach them one set of rules and then expect them to follow a different set when they grow up. I mean, how are they supposed to do that? They haven't learned the rules, social rules. So it's not healthy for teens or for adults to only consume media portraying perfect relationships. I mean, that's not real life. That's not a good influence to have either, to expect relationships to be healthy because that's all you're exposed to. But it's also not healthy to teach them that having an overly possessive or controlling boyfriend is a good thing. And I am talking about Twilight again. Edward, who was so dreamy, he was a piece of work if you think about it.
So, what about genres such as a bully romance? Does that normalize abuse in romance or simply give the audience what they want?
Well, bully romance is a very gray area because this is one of the few instances where the abuse is intentional. They do it on purpose. Mm-hmm. I actually don't read it. I didn't even know it was a thing until recently. But I think I would probably have to hold it to the same standards as any other romance book. You know, either the victim doesn't view the actual bullying as romantic, or no, two things. First, the victim doesn't view it as romantic or desirable. And secondly, the bully fully redeems himself before the happily ever after. And that was the point of my article on Kylo Ren and Rey in the last Star Wars movie, is that she shut him down. She consistently rejected him every time he made advances to her until after he redeemed himself. I'd also like to point out, I made a point in that one I think is very important. She did not save him. The love of a good woman does not save a man an evil man.
Right.
That's not how it works. Love does not turn an abuser into a lover. That's not it. So, you know, you shouldn't portray female characters as trying to save a man who doesn't want to be saved over and over and over again. It's just not. I guess that's another one of the common ones I see. There were three, I suppose. So yeah, but on that same note, it's important to realize that a thing can be sexy without being romantic, if that makes sense. Like hate sex, which is fine, you know? You can not like a person, not be in a good relationship with them or anything, and still enjoy sex with them, because it's two separate things. So as long as everyone involved is 100% into it and is going into it with their eyes open, then fine, 100%. Just so long as they're not portraying that as what love looks like, then
Okay.
I say if that's what you enjoy, then go nuts.
So what do you see as some real world implications resulting from these depictions of the problematic behaviors in our pop culture?
I think the biggest problem is that people get a skewed idea of what a healthy relationship looks like. I mean, like I said before, they can become desensitized to what casual abuse looks like. And it makes it so much harder to identify small abusive behaviors in your own life. If you're constantly told that it's romantic, how are you supposed to come to the conclusion on your own that it isn't? The Little Mermaid was my favorite movie when I was a kid. I had the whole movie memorized. I sang all the songs, loved it. But looking back, that movie told me that it was a good idea to completely change my life, to change my own body just to be with a man. And that's such a gross influence to be putting on small children. I mean, I believed it. I accepted this as truth. I remember thinking that is so romantic. The grand gesture she made for him. But it's not, you know?
No.
And same thing, I'll bring up Twilight again. I love to do that. I remembered whenever he confesses to creeping on her while she's asleep, I remember thinking, it's a good thing she likes him, or else that would have been weird as hell, knowing that someone staring at you. But she does like him, and she was flattered, so, oh, he loves her so much, right? No, that's never acceptable, no matter how much you like the person. And in fact, it wasn't until some internet stranger pointed out how creepy it was many years later that I realized how bad it was, how not acceptable that kind of behavior was. I didn't realize at the time that that was gross behavior, even though I thought it's a good thing she liked him. Even so, I thought the takeaway I had was, so long as I like him, he can do these creepy things and it's romantic. And it's not. And, you know, as authors, we are influencers, just as like any blogger or YouTuber out there. You know, we're putting ideas out into the world. And if we're not careful, we can perpetuate some of these problematic behaviors. And if somebody hadn't pointed out how creepy Edward was, you know, however long ago that was, I probably would have written a character just like him. You know, he was confident, he was sexy, he went for what he wanted. Ugh.
Yeah.
But I learned.
I had struggled with that. I had my last novel, I wrote a scene in which the hero had looked into the heroine and had her parents' address, and she didn't want to talk to him about their issues, so he just shows up there for family dinner. And
Oh, nope.
and I mean, she behaved appropriately. She's very angry at him. She tells him that this is stalkery behavior. This is not acceptable. In my original draft, though, they still finish the evening together and sleep together. I kept coming back to that literally as I was going to sleep at night, going, you need to change that. And I would read it and then I'd be like, I don't know, I like it as is. But then every time I would go to sleep, it would pop into my head that you need to change that. And then one day I was driving home and it came to my head that you need to change that. So finally I'm like, okay, I'm changing it. So I end up where they do end the evening without sleeping together and move their first time they sleep together till a little bit later, because I'm like, I can't reward him for this behavior,
Yes.
was what kept coming into my brain. So I really did struggle with that, though, as I originally put it, because I'm like, no, this is really creepy behavior, but I was using it for the funny, because her reaction and her anger and their fighting was funny. So I didn't want to change that much of it, but on the other hand, I can't reward him. He did mess up. And so as people or characters and everything are flawed. So I let him mess up, but I don't reward him for that action there in the ultimately in the final draft of the story. So yeah.
It's so easy to overlook creepy behavior in the face of romance and drama.
Mm-hmm.
It
Yep.
sneaks in there really easily.
So what are some tips for writers wanting to make sure they're writing healthy romance?
First of all, active reading. That's something every writer should be doing anyway. Reading someone else's book and paying attention to why this bit of foreshadowing worked, why this line was especially communicative, reading to learn from other writers. And you can also read to figure out why something didn't work in someone else's book. So you can really pay attention to what worked and what didn't, and you can apply that same process to the romantic, relationships in general. It doesn't just have to be romantic; it can be platonic relationships as well. It can be abusive. Mm-hmm. So yeah, just paying attention to what works. Is this creepy? Really? Is it not? Is it okay? And why? So just really paying attention to what you're reading and actively taking control of the media you're consuming, I should say, okay. And not just absorbing without thinking about it.
Right.
And the other way is beta readers, which is when you've finished your draft and you have other people read it to find problems. It's a basic process. Every writer should be doing it. But even the best of us, like you, I did the same thing. In Table 5, May invited another character for some sexy times. And the line that she used was, "I owe you one," after that. And it was supposed to be a nothing line, just a laugh off. It didn't mean anything. She was joking. Yeah. But one of my beta readers pointed out that it came across as sex being owed as payment, which is not okay. Right. And I didn't catch that in my own writing. And this is with me being so on top of this stuff. So yes, beta readers are vital because they catch those little things that we miss.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. What are some of your favorite romance tropes? And do you read the same ones you write?
Yes, absolutely. Grumpiness and sunshine is my favorite. I love a grumpy guy who is won over by a extrovert. I think that's adorable. I like fake and arranged relationships and friends to lovers, enemies to lovers. And yes, I do write them all, sometimes more than one at a time in one book. So probably in Table 5, it's an arranged relationship because the two characters, May and Jamie, they're getting together to tick off items on her bucket list. They're not together to be boyfriend and girlfriend. They have a thing that they're doing together, and they grow to fall in love with each other over the course of it. So yeah, I suppose that one is arranged relationships because it's not friends to lovers, because when they meet, they're strangers and they go straight to lovers immediately.
So where can readers find out more about you and your books?
Well, my website is a great place to start. It's annacackler.com. I have a blog there, as you mentioned before. I like to be very active on my blog. I like to talk. And I'm on Facebook as well. You can search for me at A Cackler, and on Instagram, which is Anna Cackler. Just if anybody would like to chat, I'd love to hear from you.
Great. And as always, I will have all of Anna's links down in the description below. Be sure to check those out and check out Anna's new book, Table 5. Leave us a like and a comment if you have any questions, and be sure to click that subscribe button and ring the bell to be notified of more author interviews. Thank you so much, Anna, for joining me today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was a lot of fun.
And thank you guys for watching. See you next week.